Hey, listen to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. As always, I'm Grady, and live on Skype we got Josh.
Hey.
We got like 14 Hell in a Cell matches to discuss, and as well as the pay-per-view and some NXT stuff. Let's just start where it all began. SmackDown last week. Roman Reigns, Rey Mysterio, Universal title Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah, apparently they booked the match and then realized they had approved time off for the champion. So they had to move it to Friday night.
It's something usually you'd think you'd figure out a little bit earlier in the process.
I mean, it was a good match. It was what we expected. Reigns retains. And I think they're furthering our little theory about Dominik here. Because I think it's going to get to the point where Dominik's just like, he wants to do stuff, but Rey won't let him.
Yeah, that's sort of overprotective father kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's going to lead Dominik to the path of the dark side.
I think that's where our storyline comes to a head. I still think Rey Mysterio versus Dominik, as much as the tag team is cool, you know, the first father and son tag team in the WWE, Rey Mysterio versus Dominik is still that big end goal there.
Yeah. Imagine that ladder match they had in 2004 for the custody of Dominik. Imagine if somebody had told you then that 17 years later, there would be a potential for Dominik versus Rey.
You wouldn't have thought it.
Nope.
To be fair, there's a lot you could have told me. Like, if you told me back at that time, like, the winner of that and Dominik are gonna be tag team champions together, I wouldn't have thought that either. But
no, that much I probably would have expected, because I expected Dominik to get into the business. So, like, I kind of expect Nicholas, our 10-year-old tag team champion, to eventually get into the business full time at some point.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from down the road we have Nicholas versus Dominik at some point.
There's a lot of second and third and fourth generation wrestlers that are, I guess, waiting in the wings, ready to go. And it'll be interesting to see them develop as the future of the WWE in the next, as you say, 10 years.
Yeah. It will definitely be interesting in seeing how they play off on that end. And then also the tribal family storyline that's continuing. Because Jimmy's definitely still not falling in line at the moment. And then we're going to see if Jay snaps on Reigns.
Yeah, we still don't know what way they're going to swing.
Yeah, so it's and also, will there be consequences for Paul Heyman accepting a challenge on Reigns' behalf? Because that could be an issue.
There's quite a few things surrounding that Universal title and surrounding our tribal chief that are sort of heating up. You know, we got SummerSlam in the distance, but it is slowly getting closer and closer. And we do have to look at what possible matchups and storylines we can have heading into that. And at the moment, for the focus of him, as you say, we got Paul Heyman sitting by his side. We got the two Usos still fighting over whether they're a part of this, whether they're not a part of this. And I think that's going to heat up just tenfold as we head towards SummerSlam, and maybe Reigns retains past that, and we head into the next WrestleMania. I can't tell you when the end of Reigns' title run is going to come.
Yeah, and there's also a rumor of a potential WWE draft in the near future. That could definitely shake everything up as well.
It could split people. It could pile more on top. It could provide Reigns some new challenges. It could do 100 different things. Drafts are always good fun.
We know it'll break up a bunch of teams for no apparent reason. Because that's what they always do in drafts.
You can draft the whole team for one pick. No, I only want one member of this team. Every time. But let's jump into the pay-per-view itself, Hell in a Cell, and you know what? I'm just gonna stick with our theme. We're gonna talk about all these cell matches. First one on the night was the SmackDown Women's Championship, Bianca Belair defending against Bayley.
The definitive win we needed Belair to have. So that was definitely what the direction we need to go. Belair has exorcised the demon known as Bayley, and now we get to see where she goes as champion from here. And Bayley gets to take some time away from the championship for a little while.
Yeah, great match. And I think, as you say, it's the end of the feud. Let's see where they go from here. Excited to see who steps up as Belair's next challenger. Similar to Reigns, you got to look a little bit ahead. See, are we going to be heading into SummerSlam with Belair still holding the belt? Is she going to drop it to somebody else between now and then? What does Money in the Bank hold? Obviously being the next pay-per-view. Quite a few twists and turns that we can still make between now and then as well.
Yeah. I have an idea of what I think they're going to do with the Money in the Bank briefcase, but I think that's something I want to talk about later on the show.
Yeah. We'll hopefully be able to jimmy in the end, talk about some of those Money in the Bank qualifiers and the people already announced for the ladder matches. But we'll stick to the cells. We love those medals, 4-sided, 6-sided, 5-sided structures. There's 5 sides. Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and Drew McIntyre's last chance.
Yep. This was a great Hell in the Cell match. Absolutely brutal between the two of them, which we came to expect because their other matches had been brutal.
Yeah.
And these are two of the stronger guys in the company to begin with Lashley being legitimately the toughest guy in the company, with Lesnar not in the company at the moment. That could change at any moment.
Yeah, hint, hint, wink, wink.
So yeah, it's like, what do you expect when you put them in the cell? They're going to destroy each other. And that's pretty much what happened, and Drew cannot challenge for the WWE Championship anytime in the near future unless he wins a certain match, which he's not currently qualified for.
It's possible. I don't think it's the direction they'll head with him, but it's definitely possible.
Well, he's not even in the last chance match for Raw. So unless he's still somebody's spot, which would be completely and totally out of character for him, he's not going to get the briefcase.
I thought he was in the last chance match.
I thought he wasn't.
I'm scrolling rapidly. Yeah, it's Drew, Orton, and AJ.
Oh, okay.
So he's got a chance. There's still a chance.
Yeah. So yeah, unless he gets that briefcase, there's no circumstance in which he can go after the championship as long as Lashley holds it.
Mm.
And that may be the key.
Yeah.
Lashley holding the championship.
Because I'm jumping all over the place. Because on Raw, we already learned exactly where Bobby Lashley's going to be headed after this. Bobby Lashley versus Kofi Kingston is our feud, is our match. And we got our 4th Hell in a Cell match of the week. Bobby Lashley versus Xavier Woods. I wouldn't have believed you if you told me that is going to be the match.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Xavier Woods, but it looks like you just been killed and been skinned and hanged on a wall for the almighty Bobby Lashley to display as a trophy.
It was a little rough.
Yeah. I will say this. Lashley's the first person to ever compete in 2 Hell in a Cell matches in a 24-hour period.
Usually there isn't that many Hell in a Cell matches.
Yeah. But yeah, we're getting what we wanted for this pay-per-view. We're just going to get it for the next one, which eliminates Kofi as an option for the Money in the Bank.
Yeah, obviously we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to the Money in the Bank stuff, but they don't kind of need him either. But I guess unluckily for Kofi, I also don't see Kofi being able to dethrone the Almighty. After that impressive showing against Xavier Woods. Obviously, kayfabe and storyline-wise, Kofi Kingston's a little bit higher up on the totem pole than Xavier Woods, but it's going to be an uphill battle for him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting seeing how Kofi combats the champion. I don't think Kofi can beat him, but Kofi has done some stuff that we wouldn't expect in the past, so I wouldn't put him past it.
It's not impossible.
I really don't think that this is the direction they want to go.
No. I think it'll be a cool little feud, cool little match. But I agree. I don't think Kofi Kingston as WWE champion is something that we're going to see in the next few months. Could be. Just don't see it. look, before we get to the rest of the matches of Hell in a Cell, I'm just going to go to the entrance theme here, because it seems like a nice point to pause us after we've talked about the 4 Hell in a Cell matches that happened this past week. Do we want to play the song and explain it afterwards, or do we want to explain it and talk a little bit and then play the song?
That's up to you. You're in charge of the show.
Here's the song. It's playing for you now.
Stand back! There's a hurricane coming through.
And you're back with Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and NPR. I'm Grady, he's Josh. Why the hell did we play Hurricane Helms' theme?
Maybe because we have a new superhero on the scene?
And it's not one we would have guessed.
No, but it makes total sense.
It's working.
Think about it. We've always described Nikki Cross as just being BS crazy. And she is demented enough to believe that she's a superhero. And the character can work. People like Nikki. I want to see how they progress with this. And I love the fact that this is her idea. This isn't something WWE just shoved on her. She came up with this. And they're running with it.
Yeah, it should be a fun one, as you say, just to see what happens and what develops out of it. Because usually when a character is someone's own idea, like it is with Nikki's here, they get a lot more into it. They reinforce it so much more. And looking back at like the old design sketches and stuff that are over Twitter, you can tell that she's put a lot of thought into this idea as well. And she's on a roll storyline-wise as well, having defeated Rhea multiple times, Charlotte multiple times, and scoring herself a spot in the Money in the Bank as well.
Yeah, you can tell that she idolized Molly Holly. So that, and I loved Molly, whether she was the sidekick to Hurricane Helms or any other iteration of Molly. So I want to see how this plays out. And I think there's an obvious end goal for this storyline too. Because if she's going to be a superhero, there's a villain already in the women's division. And I think we want to see it because they have great chemistry because they're former tag team champions. I think the eventual storyline is Alexa Bliss versus our hero, Nikki Cross. Can Nikki save Alexa from the evil? Or will Alexa corrupt our hero? Find out in the next issue.
I was going to say, dun dun dun. You're trying to sell me on a Dragon Ball Z episode here or something?
But I think that's our end goal. Because they're clear polar opposites at this point in terms of characters. Because Alexa is clearly the Harley Quinn of WWE. Yeah. As much as I hate that term for her. And so her being a big time villain type character, it would make sense for them to eventually have Alexa Bliss versus Nikki Cross. And I think there's a certain match that could help set that up in a way down the run that can really placate us as Nikki fans too. Let's go ahead and talk about the Alexa Bliss match so we can get to what I want to talk about.
Sorry, Hell in a Cell. We'll get to it. Alexa Bliss, Shayna Baszler. Let's just skim through at Hell in a Cell. Alexa Bliss showing off some more of her freaky powers.
Yeah. She needed to get back in the ring, and she's doing her thing. Shayna Baszler is definitely nothing to sneeze at in terms of opponent to be defeated. I think Alexa Bliss wins the briefcase. Okay. I think she wins the briefcase and claims one of the world titles. Probably the Raw one, which would suck for our champion, but
it would suck for
in
either
terms
champion.
of storylines and stuff, there wouldn't be anybody more suited to taking down our champion than Alexa. And that would be perfect fodder for our Nikki storyline. Nikki eventually earns a title match against our champion Alexa.
You're pitching a Nikki title run here?
If they decide that they want good to conquer evil.
You going off your rocker?
She would get the title.
We never get what we want.
Yeah. So that would be an interesting way to propel them together as an eventual match. Would be Nikki versus her for the Raw Women's Championship. Or SmackDown Women's Championship, depending on which show they're on at the time that they are champion and challenger. But that's if the fans will buy in to the Nikki Cross superhero storyline.
Yeah.
Because I think this is going to be 100% dependent on the fan reaction.
Which I guess we'll get to hear at Money in the Bank, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I could see either one of them winning the briefcase. I know Alexa's already won one, so she'd be the first woman to win two. But... so that's where I'm at the moment. Mm-hmm. I think one of those two are Money in the Bank winner. They're going to win the championship, and the other will be the challenger at some point down the road, and they'll have this Joker Batman type storyline.
Mm-hmm. Nikki's now Batman. Okay, I'm down with Batman, Nikki. Let's get to the rest of Hell.
Well, I couldn't say Superman because that's Roman Reigns.
That's true. We can't use that superhero. We still got like a bunch of Hell in a Cell to talk about. I feel like that's the most we've talked about something in a while. But it's Nikki Cross, so it's explained. Let's roll it all the way back to the start of Hell in a Cell. We had a pre-show match just thrown on there. It was Natalya taking on Mandy Rose, and the Women's Tag Team Champion walked out the winner.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot to it.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to talk about. That was just a match to get people into the show. A further story develops our current champions. And there's not really much more we can say because we really don't care about the championships they're holding.
Yeah, I guess if Mandy had won here, maybe it would have led to them going, okay, well, we have a right for the title shot. Give us the title shot. But Mandy copped the loss here, so it doesn't really do anything for the women's tag team titles in terms of advancing that story. Really have no idea what they're going to do with these titles. I say that, I feel like almost every week. I have no idea what they're going to do with these titles. So I'll just sit here and virtually shrug. There's not really an audio noise for shrugging. Pretend you hear it.
Yeah. You don't know what they're doing with the titles because they don't know what they're doing with the titles. Because they introduced their title without having the bodies they needed for the tag teams. And then cut off half their tag teams with another title.
Yep. Bad decision making. Let's stay in the women's division. We were talking about it a little bit here and there, but Charlotte Flair did technically defeat Rhea Ripley at Hell in a Cell, but did not walk away with the gold around her waist.
And you called me crazy for putting that into the universe.
Yeah.
It does what it has to do. Rhea is still champion, and it furthered the storyline because it wasn't in the sale, so it wasn't going to be the definitive end, because they always had an out, because it wasn't a cell match.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get one more match between Flair and Ripley at Money in the Bank, because Sonya said so.
That's the bottom line?
Yep, I guess so. I think that's when Rhea conquers Charlotte Flair.
Mm-hmm.
Once and for all. I think that is going to be the defining moment for Rhea Ripley. Probably right before Alexa Bliss completely demolishes her world.
No, because don't put that into your list. I'm going to
assume if Alexa Bliss wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, she's using it that night.
I think there's some cool stuff they could do.
Yeah, because her powers that she has could definitely put in a position where the champion, whoever it is, could be completely knocked out without her even touching him. And then she just comes in and takes the title.
Alexa's powers are still very confusing to me, and I make no attempt to understand them. They might change. They might get stronger. They might get nerfed. I don't know. But I'm not...
Don't expect any patch notes on her powers.
Please, WWE, give me the patch notes. We'll release them. But, like, I could see her doing some creepy mind game stuff with the briefcase if she's the one holding it. But I could also see her dumping it immediately and just trying to use it up nice and fast. Usually one of the two Money in the Banks gets used pretty fast. And so if it happens to be the woman's one, and Bliss wins it, and she gets the title, so be it. We got 2 more matches on Hell in a Cell, if I can count. First one, let's go with Cesaro Rollins.
Now they're 1-1. It was another good match between Rollins and Cesaro. I honestly don't know if they're going to do any kind of, triumphant match. For all we know, this may be the end of Cesaro's push, for all we know. Much to the chagrin of Mick Foley.
I could see Cesaro, I feel like we say this so often, but I'm going to repeat it again. When we record this show, SmackDown hasn't aired yet. So, we don't know who the SmackDown entrants are into the Money in the Bank, so if we say something that sounds foolish in hindsight, that's why. But I could see Cesaro finding himself a slot in the Money in the Bank match.
Yeah, I expect him to be in the Money in the Bank. I expect Big E to be in the Money in the Bank. I don't know if Seth will be. Seth definitely could be. There are a lot of options on the SmackDown side. I expect one of the Usos to be in the match. Probably Jay, but I could see them changing things up and putting Jimmy in the match. And Jay being jealous about it.
Yeah.
But I expect at least 3 of those 4 people I just mentioned to be SmackDown representatives for the match.
And who knows at that point, because the other match that we still have left on Hell in a Cell to mention as we rapidly run out of time, Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens, we know at least one of them's probably not gonna be a SmackDown representative for Money in the Bank.
Yeah, Kevin Owens is apparently taking some time off. That's the curse of working with a certain individual at WrestleMania. And I applaud Sami for defeating the person who brought that evil into WWE.
Yeah. But I guess the question is here, as we're throwing out our wild guesses for Money in the Bank, do we think Sami Zayn is going to find himself in that representative spot?
No, because of the conspiracy.
Okay.
It makes 100% sense that Sami Zayn does not get in the match because of the conspiracy.
Okay. I'll allow it. So we got about 3 minutes left in the show. It's not a lot of time, but we will just quickly run down who's in the Money in the Bank matches at the moment. The women's match, we already talked about Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross getting spots in it, but we also saw Asuka and Naomi get spots in the match as well, rounding out the presumably Raw field, assuming it's 4-4.
Yeah, which is why we focused so heavily on Bliss and Cross. Because we think it's going to be a Raw person, even though a Raw person has won, I think, the last 2 years.
Yes, I think, from memory. It's hard to tell. Maybe they'll swerve us and have Naomi win. You never know with Money in the Bank. It can go one of 100 ways. But at the moment, with the 4 people we know, the most obvious choices are to go Bliss or Cross. And this time the briefcase
I have
probably...
to take that back. SmackDown won 2019 because Bayley got her beginning of her run with it.
But this time we don't believe that the briefcase will automatically equal a championship. Probably not.
No.
And then on the men's side of the field from Raw, Ricochet managed to win his match against, I believe, AJ Styles. John Morrison won his match against Randy Orton, and Riddle won his match against Drew McIntyre.
The biggest shock of all, I think, was Riddle winning.
I'll be honest, all 3 of those were pretty big shocks. They were all definitely underdogs.
I will say close second is Ricochet. Simply because it was AJ Styles that he beat. But yeah, I would say they're definitely setting up a interesting and potential unexpected champ winner.
Mm-hmm.
Because could you imagine Riddle with the briefcase? that would be just, I would be dying laughing because I just imagine him doing some of the craziest stuff with that briefcase.
I don't know if WWE's insurance covers smoke damage to their items, but yeah, I think honestly this is the most exciting field you could have when you've only got 3 people announced for it. If you're telling me Ricochet, John Morrison, and Riddle, that's 3 not necessarily young guys, but guys who haven't had, massive world title runs that I could definitely all see grabbing the brass ring and running with it metaphorically. And it's all guys who do, maybe outside Ricochet, I guess, quite good character work, and could definitely nail whatever they need to nail with holding the briefcase.
Yeah, and then you have Styles, Orton, and McIntyre to round out that quartet. That one of them is going to add their star power to the match. And that's great as long as they don't win the match. Although I would say Styles I'd be more okay with, because he's been away from the championship for a while, so it would be an option to get him back into it. But the other two, I'm like, I'm done for a while for them.
Well, we'll see who wins out of those three next week on Raw, and we'll talk about it next week on Wrestling Roundup, because we've run out of time. It's been great talking to you.
Bye, B.
You visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/wrestling R&D up. I got it right. Our Twitter page, twitter.com/wrestling R&D up, or our YouTube page, youtube.com/wrestling RND up. And we'll see you next week.